You can eat your way out of heart disease, and doctors John McDougall and Hans Diehl are here to talk about it with our hosts Mike and Gail Tucker on today's Lifestyle Magazine.
You've fed it every day for years, but you weren't aware of it. It's grown bigger and bigger inside your arteries. Finally, it's ambushed you, and the first sign of its presence was the words from the ER physician as you drifted away: another heart attack. Today we have Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Hans Diehl. They're here to talk about heart disease and how you can eat your way out of it. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm so glad that you're both here.
Well, thank you
for taking your time. Well, let's start out. What is heart disease, Dr. Diehl? How would you categorize it? How would you define it?
It's a devastating disease, hardly known 100 years ago. Today, responsible for every second, every third death in our society. It all has to do with the narrowing of the arteries.
Okay.
The coronary arteries are supposed to bring blood, oxygen to the heart muscle. And when they become narrow, like it's typically in our society, usually have some problems. Not enough oxygen coming to the heart muscle. There's a pain there, angina pain, and when the blood flow is interrupted, it can lead to the heart attack.
Well, let me give you a little scarier part of this whole thing.
Okay.
You know, you have these narrowings that build up, these blockages.
Right.
And let me paint a picture for you as to how it happens, and it'll explain a lot of issues about coronary artery disease. What happens is inside the artery walls, there's a lining, and this lining gets sores. In fact, I'd call them festering sores on it, like pimples on a teenager's face. And these festering sores are a consequence of damage from your fork and spoon, cholesterol and fat being attacking these arteries. And so you get these little pimples, and these little pimples pop. And whenever you have an injury, like if you cut your hand, what happens is a blood clot forms on top. So the pimple pops, blood clot forms on top, and if it just forms a small blood clot, then that organizes into scar tissue. So you got a little layer inside, a little layer of blockage. And then what happens a couple months later is another pimple pops, and another blood clot forms on top of that, and then fibrous tissue, scar tissue sets in, and builds up a little bit more. And finally you get these big blockages through these repeated ruptures of these volatile plaques, we call them. But sometimes one of these volatile plaques ruptures and the blood clot is so big that it blocks the whole heart artery, and then you have that sudden heart attack. So this explains to people why perfectly healthy people drop dead of heart disease. Half of them think there's nothing wrong. You know, you put your husband to bed at night, you wake up the next morning, you shake him, he's not there.
Not there.
And you say, he was perfect. He was perfect last night when I put him to bed.
What happened?
No, he had thousands of tiny sores.
That's awful.
Thousands of tiny sores in arteries, and one of them popped.
Pop. Yeah.
So what people need to know is that this is the way, it's a very unforgiving disease, and this is the way it occurs, and that you have close to 100% control over the formation of those sores. It's due to the cheese and the chicken and the beef and the garbage you keep shoveling into those arteries. And as soon as you stop doing that, these little tiny pimples, they quiet down. And then the heart attack risk goes away. But you go out for a big weekend, you have yourself, you know, I'm not going to mention any brand names, but I'm sure one comes to mind. And you get those pimples all activated, those volatile sores, those festering sores all activated. One of those little guys pops, and boy,
there you go.
And you have a heart attack.
Well, Dr. Diehl, it's not just the heart disease itself, though. I mean, this has an effect upon the rest of your body, doesn't it? Heart disease does?
Yeah, it does. It affects the whole circulatory system. Most moderately large vessels are becoming affected by this. And John talked about these kind of, you talked about pimples, right? That's a good point. And you can perhaps talk about maybe also a Band-Aid. The body tries to heal itself, puts a Band-Aid on, and after a while these Band-Aids become so large they interfere with the blood flow that is supposed to be there. And this is not just the coronary arteries, but it's the arteries to the brain, to the eyes, to the ear, you know, to every portion of the body. So this is really a very systemic disease affecting all of the body's organs.
Yeah, let me mention some diseases. Hearing loss, ringing in the ears, vertigo, where you get dizzy.
Really?
Yeah, macular degeneration, kidney failure, gangrene in the foot,
And
impotence. How about impotence?
All of the
I'm sorry, I had to answer it. Impotence is caused by closure.
Well, you got every man's attention with that one, didn't you?
No, that's the cause. That's the cause. It's caused by closure of the arteries to that very vital organ.
Any more cheese, he said.
Yeah, no more cheese.
You know, you're afraid of heart attack, Mike. I got one for you. I got one. I'll take and bring shivers down your spine, I'll tell you. But that's the reason. That is the reason you get those problems. And back pain, even back pain. The arteries to the spine, they close down and you get angina in the back. And then the disc between the spine bones, those discs degenerate. Everybody in the listening audience has heard of degenerative disc disease.
Yes, sure. Yes.
Well, they don't stop and say, why did it degenerate?
Yeah.
Well, it degenerated because they had a low blood supply, and then it just rots, and then you just move. You know, it's not like you pick up a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
You just move.
Yeah.
That disc pops. And then the next one above pops because it's got the same circulation. The next one below pops.
Basically, all of it has to do with the narrowing so that the blood can't get through. We don't get enough oxygen. We don't get the nutrients.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when we talk about degenerative diseases. Most of the time people think, well, this has to do with aging. We're getting older, so we're degenerating. Not so. You can find populations where they have virtually none of these kind of narrowing arteries, and they're 70, 80, 85 years of age. Just like it was basically in our society about 100 years ago. It was difficult to find these kind of, what do you call these, pimples, right?
Yeah, the volatile plaques.
Volatile plaques, yeah.
Okay.
These plaques that can rupture. That's exactly what happened to Tim Resser. You remember Tim Resser?
Yes.
That's exactly what happened. Shocking.
Well, you know, we've heard John talk about this for years. It's good to hear you join in with him. The two of you agree on this. And you've alluded to this already. It has to do with the food. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And we will be right back after this.
There's much more on Lifestyle Magazine, so stay tuned.
Today we're talking with Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Hans Diehl about how food affects our heart. Now, we were just mentioning before the break how other societies, other countries are not experiencing the heart disease that we are, and we didn't have it 100 years ago. And the difference is?
Well, it's largely what we do to ourselves.
Okay.
How we eat, how we exercise, if we smoke, how we love. All these kind of factors are coalescing into creating this epidemic. But probably the most important factor is how we eat.
How we eat. Now, you mentioned smoking and other things are a part of this, but if you're not a smoker, you can still have heart disease simply because of the way you eat.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's the wrong emphasis, Mike.
Help me out.
It's the food. It's the food, and smoking is an issue, and exercise is an issue, but they're used as scapegoats.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to say anything good about it.
It's still important.
The problems with food.
All right.
We eat a diet for kings and queens. It's the wrong food for people. They die. And it's a really mass murder out there. I can't say it any other way. And you know what? The government and the doctors and the scientists know exactly what's going on. And still, for profits, people die, get fat, and get sickened. It's just a matter of feeding cheese and meat and so on to people and making profits. It's a sad thing. As Dr. Diehl was saying, in countries like Japan, where they smoke, they have very little heart disease.
In spite of the smoking, very little heart disease because of the different diet.
It's the food. Diet. You need to eat a diet based on starch, like rice or potatoes. You can't eat a diet based on cheese and meat, because that'll sicken you.
So if I get my baked potato and I heap on the butter and the sour cream and the cheese, I've really kind of ruined the potato, haven't I? That's what we're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, probably when you get done, of the calories you just ate, 2/3 of them came from the butter and cheese.
The butter and the cheese. Yeah. But certainly not from the potato
really
itself,
what you did
right?
is you had cheese and butter. You put a little potato on it. That's the problem.
So you take the potato and what do you do with it?
What do you do? What do you put on it?
You could have mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can do all kinds of things. Some people like salsa. Some people like, how about yesterday's lentil soup?
Lentil soup.
You just want to have it moist. I mean, that's the issue, right?
That's it, yeah.
So put the lentils on the potato itself. It moistens the potato.
Yeah.
You get the benefit of the lentils and the potato without the negative effects of the cheese, butter, sour cream.
It doesn't have to be the fatty things that you put on top, but use something healthy, that is tasty, that is giving this potato that moisture that you're looking for.
I'll go dramatic for you.
What's that?
I'll go dramatic for
Okay.
you.
Okay.
We'll leave it to you to do this.
There are populations of people,
Yes.
like at the turn of the 19th century in Poland and Russia, that's all they ate was potatoes.
Potatoes.
Right.
And in 1928, they did an experiment where they raised a man and a woman, a 25-year-old man and a 28-year-old woman who were athletes, on an all-potato diet for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, they made 2 statements in the paper. It's written by a guy named Kahn. You can look it up on the internet. Look up Kahn and all-potato diet. 2 statements. One is they did not tire of the all-potato diet. They had no desire for change. And
Interesting.
And the potatoes supplied all their nutritional needs.
All the protein they needed.
All the protein they needed.
Everything else that they needed was in the potatoes.
In the potatoes. And there's actually a guy right now who works for the Potato Commission who has agreed to go on a 60-day only potato diet. And you know, Mike, I mean, you look at your relatives, your friends, and so on. You find me a woman that just lost her 50-year-old husband from a heart attack, and you say to her, well, would you have fed him potatoes for the last 60 days if you could have them with you now?
Oh, yeah.
And she'd said yes. I mean, this is really serious stuff.
It is
We're not
serious
talking about, we're not talking about a little indigestion. We're talking about life and death, killing families, and we know the cause. And anybody that wants to take action, it's not a miserable change. It's just a matter of eating potatoes and rice and corn and pasta.
Dr. Diehl, is he overstating this? Is he overstating this?
I'd rather eat with my eyes as well. I like to have some color on my plate, right?
Yes.
But still,
the point is...
The point is well made, is it not?
Yeah, it's very well made, yeah. So that actually means then that the fork and spoon and knife, could really be weapons of mass destruction. Right?
Yeah.
You use them this way, or you use them this way.
Yeah.
It's a friend or foe. I mean, this is really a very, very important question to discuss.
Very good.
Now, can we actually reverse the damage that we've already done by eating? I mean, we eat our way into this problem. Can we eat our way out, or we just stop creating any more damage?
Yeah, we can eat our way into it. We do that very successfully in our society.
Yeah,
right?
we're good at that in the
Supersize it.
United States.
Yeah.
We are.
Right. But when you begin to go back to a more, shall we say, natural diet, whole foods diet, as you begin to eat more of the vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains, more food as it comes to us in nature, something happens. The cholesterol levels go down, the weight goes down, the fat levels go down, and you begin to see a gradual melting down of these plaques on the inside.
That's
Those
amazing.
pimples no longer pop.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they
Actually
begin to
goes away.
regress. And that's what you want.
Well, now we've got a video that we'd like to show right now that illustrates the effects of a poor diet. And it's rather graphic, so watch this video. We'll be right back.
Woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight? He said, yes. I said, what did you have? He said, I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake. And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
That video is absolutely stunning.
Oh my goodness.
It's incredible.
I can't believe it.
And if that won't change your mind about the food, then really nothing's going to do it, is
Grease just sticking to the sides of the vial? So that's what it does?
And did you notice how the artery begins to develop this inner sheathing, this inner lining, and we may not be able to pull it out just like we saw in the illustration here, but that's what the killer is. The killer lives inside of the arteries, and we're feeding it 3 times a day.
All right, we're going to talk about that and how to kill it. And we're going to do that when we come back. We will be back in about 2 minutes.
More on eating your way out of heart disease in just a moment when Lifestyle Magazine returns.
Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Hans Diehl are with us talking about reversing heart disease by eating the right foods. So, can you give us some examples of how this has worked? You have a special program for this.
We have 50,000 stories.
50,000 stories.
We have 50,000 graduates of the CHIP program. Now, this is not potato chips or
no. Tell us what is the CHIP program?
This is the
CHIP program might sound pretty good to some people.
That's right. This is the coronary health improvement program.
Okay.
It's a community-based program where people come for 40 hours of education. And we help them to understand the science of why we perhaps should make some wiser choices. And then we show them how to do it. And so as they come to us in groups of 50 people or 500 people, they begin to interact among themselves. There's a magic of working with other people. You're not the only one that is making changes. And
that's big, isn't it?
It is.
Because you feel like you're kind of the Lone Ranger. You're the only one over here eating your potato when somebody else is,
Yeah, but it's also an accountability structure.
Yes.
So if somebody's inspired, how do they find out about a CHIP program?
Well, they can go on a website. They can find it right there. There are CHIP chapters all over the country. They can sign up and they can join the program. It's run in churches, it's run in hospitals, it's run in corporations.
Community centers.
So you should spread this far and wide in order to get as many people involved with the CHIP program as possible.
And I've been involved a little bit with these CHIP programs, and they do exactly what needs to be done. They take people who are struggling with disease or that want to prevent disease and are hooked on the American diet, don't know anything different.
Sure.
And they teach them, they give them community, they give them support, they give them success. I mean, and for almost no money at all. It's just an amazing program. And Hans and I have been together for probably 25 years, and I've seen his work. And I would have to say he's done more. And this is not an exaggeration. He's done more to help people from around the world in a practical manner than anybody I know through these CHIP programs.
That's exciting.
I didn't hear that right. Can you say that again?
Hans Diehl, Dr. Hans Diehl has done more to help the average man and woman in this country. Over 25 years of work, just getting in their faces, getting in their homes, and tell them that they don't have to be sick, and then showing them how to do it through the CHIP programs. Everybody needs to be involved in these.
People don't have a clue of how to start, though, do they? I remember growing up, we had some neighbors across the street, and every single evening their meal was hamburgers. Every night. That's
so
how
was
they
mine.
So
is that right? When you were growing up?
When I was a kid, before I had my stroke and was a fat. And
how would they know anything else? And how do you get them over the hump to realize that there is something else better?
We're living in a very seductive environment.
Yes.
That's all we have, and we don't even know anything better until we listen to people like John McDougall.
John McDougall.
Yes.
See? And you hear some of these people, the voices are there, the voices are growing. There are people like Dr. Esselstyn, the people like Dr. Campbell, like Dr. Barnard, and these are well-positioned scientists that are giving a very clear ring to this message that you are largely determining how long you want to live and the disease you want to have. We have a lot more to do ourselves with what happens to us than we always thought. We always thought, well, somehow someone is pulling the plug. Well, we begin to understand now, well, we have a lot to do with that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I would overemphasize that. We have everything to do with it. We have total determination as to whether we're going to get heart disease, have a stroke, be fat. I mean, It's the food. You just got to fix the
Total
food.
determination as to whether you get heart disease.
What is the determination?
You said you have total determination.
Heart disease.
I absolutely will not get a heart attack, have a heart attack, if I eat properly.
That's correct, if you start young enough. Heart disease, as we talked about earlier in this show, I mean, there are populations of people where there were no heart attacks. And even in this country 150 years ago, there were no heart attacks. So we're talking about disease that doesn't exist unless you eat the rich Western diet. And if people understood that powerful message, they would know how much control they have. But they don't understand. You see, we have a whole industry out there trying to stuff cheese in your pizza and cow muscle down your gut, and you know, just to make money.
If there's not enough cheese on the pizza, that you can put it inside the crust now.
It's in the crust now. It's industries trying to fatten and kill you, and you know they're getting caught. That's the exciting thing, is they're getting caught.
Well, yeah, you
and
do
the
see some
person who
change.
cares, the viewer who cares out there, must stand up and save themselves and their family. But you can be saved. This is not inevitable. You don't have to get breast cancer and colon cancer and multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis and heart disease and strokes. These are dietary diseases. All you got to do is get a little information, like go to a CHIP program, get on the website, and just save your family.
Yeah. Well, Dr. McDougall, Dr. Diehl, I want to thank both of you for the work that you're doing in this area, because you're both passionate about this. It's obvious. You've spent your lives doing this, and thank you, and America thanks you. And we'll be right back after this.
Stay tuned for more Lifestyle Magazine.
Welcome back. We've had a fascinating discussion with Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Hans Diehl. Thank you, gentlemen, for your work. Thank you for your passion about this subject. You can reverse heart disease. Get into a CHIP program. Get into something. Change your diet, because, you know, it's going to make a difference for you. Thanks for being a part of this one. We'll see you next time. But until then, you take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Start eating your way out of heart disease today by calling for your free copy of John and Mary McDougall's All-You-Can-Eat Vegetarian Cookbook. Yes, you heard right, All-You-Can-Eat Vegetarian Cookbook. It's free. Just call 888-940-0062 and ask for All-You-Can-Eat Vegetarian Cookbook. That's 888-940-0062. Or simply visit us at lifestyle.org. That's lifestyle.org. Either way, ask for the book by John and Mary McDougall, All You Can Eat Vegetarian Cookbook. Once again, our phone number is 888-940-0062.